As covered in a separate video, there are different ways of accessing the patient's chart. We're going to go through now all of the different pieces of information that are available at the patient register level. One of these components, of course, is demographics. In this particular video, we are going to discuss primarily the address and the contacts tab down here at the bottom. Separate videos will approach these other tabs, such as the other info, physicians, and billing info. Once you've chosen your patient, the default page is called Patient Details, and that's what we're looking at here. Now, across the top of the page, you see the patient's very basic demographics, the name, their date of birth, their chart number, their gender, marital status. The primary provider is the provider within your practice, whom that patient primarily is assigned to. The referring provider, of course, comes out of the referring doctor master as to who has referred that patient to you. If you use a practice management system, the external ID and the account number may be populated to give you reference back to your mainframe. Now, in the lower left, we have the address tab. Pretty self-explanatory as far as street, city, state, zip code. We do have country for those of you who live outside of the United States. We see here that for Daniel Hernandez, he's within Puerto Rico, so we have clicked the non-US flag. If the patient is within the United States, then that non-US flag would be deselected, and notice how the country defaults to US and is disabled. We're going to go ahead and put Daniel back as Puerto Rican. Now, the primary contact information is the patient's primary way of being addressed, whether it's through his work phone, his cell phone, email, or if there is no preference. Whatever you designate here does populate on the tooltip at the scheduling level for when you need to make phone call reminders. So it is important that whatever you choose matches the phone number that you have entered down below. So we're going to go ahead and give him a cell phone number. We've already entered his email, of course, which is important, though not mandatory. On the right-hand side, we have options such as leave message on answering machine. If you are using the text reminder feature and have entered the patient's cell phone, you will be able to click that box. And of course, if the patient doesn't want to receive any reminders, you can indicate that by clicking the decline to receive reminder. Now, our contacts tab has both employment information as well as the person's emergency contact and their spouse or parent if it is a case of a child. Now, with regards to the employer, we're going to reference this in several of our videos, specifically for those of you who use our practice management with regards to workman's comp and employer billing. The employer master is important to set up and use in those situations. Now, if you're not using prognosis billing, or even if you are, but workman's comp and employer billing are not applicable in your practice, then the employer master is not as critical. So therefore, the field does allow data entry. Now, if you are using the master file, but the employer does not exist, notice that the plus sign icon will allow the user to create a new employer directly from Patient Register if they have the appropriate permissions to do so. So other than the employer, the contacts tab also has the emergency contact as well as the spouse, parent, or guardian. And you'll notice each of these has its own address tab as well as a check mark to indicate whether or not it is the same as the patient. Then down here at the bottom, we have the More button. Now, this button may not display initially on your screen because it is property driven. For those of you who prefer to have more than 2 emergency contacts, the property can be defined with additional relationships, and that will then allow you to enter additional ones. For instance, we see that we have defined brother, caregiver, grandparent, and so on. This is especially beneficial in cases where a child may have 2 sets of parents, and you want to maintain details for both. Now, you'll notice that once you have entered an additional contact, the label of our More button will include a check mark. So as far as patient demographics is concerned, the address and the contacts tab is where that data is maintained under the patient register. Of course, over here above the photograph, we do have these additional shortcuts, which we briefly highlighted in the overview video. The extension of demographics here would be the umbrella, which is your patient insurance. the briefcase, which is case management for injury, and then of course we have our consent forms under legal documents. All of these, of course, are covered in separate videos within this series. Now let's take a few moments to review. Patient demographics include name, date of birth, gender, marital status, address, emergency contacts and employment, as well as direct links to patient insurance, case management details, and legal documents such as consent forms. That concludes this video within the series. Please click the appropriate link below for your next step. If you'd like to take a quiz, you will receive your results in real time directly on the screen so that you can see how well you've done. If you answer incorrectly, the system will prompt you with the correct response. In addition, a confidential email will be sent to the education team to help us better serve you with our educational offerings. Second, advance to the next video within the series you're currently in. And finally, return to the video library main page. As always, feel free to contact us through the Resource Center or email with any additional questions or comments.